What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Yant, man. We're back with another video. In today's video, we're going to be covering the series Bleach. Now, much like my Naruto review that I just did, and the link to that will be in the description, and I'll put a link here on the screen. And if you want to go check that out, if you like Naruto and you want to see my thoughts and opinions on Naruto, and that's what this video will be covering. Just an overall encompassing review of Bleach, the series. And I'll be touching on the main arcs more so, just the Soul Society arc, Hollow arc, which Waco Mundo arc, Fate Katakura Town, the Fullbring arc, and the War arc. Now, I know for anime only people, this will contain spoilers because it will have the entire War arc spoilers on there as well. And I know that has not been fully animated. So, if you don't want to get spoiled, I would appreciate it if you drop a like, subscribe and comment. Tell me what you'd like about Bleach and maybe what else you would want me to cover, maybe a character or a certain arc in specific. I plan on eventually making more videos on the actual arcs specifically, but for right now, we're just going to cover the entire series as a whole, and I'm just going to briefly run through each arc and kind of like my opinion on it and review of it. So with that being said, Bleach, just to give you a little personal introduction to how I came into Bleach. It was much like I did Naruto. I found it around the same time. Obviously, it didn't come out at the same time, but I found Bleach on Adult Swim as well. And people have seen Adult Swim back in the day. It's where you found most of your anime. They ran Dragon Ball Z, Naruto, Cowboy Bebop, Trigun, and plenty of other ones to count. But Bleach aired on the Shonen Jump line from 2001 to 2016, so about roughly 15 years that it ran this course, and it is considered a part of the big three, which the big three is Naruto, Bleach, and One Piece, because they pretty much ran the majority of the sales in popularity when it comes to anime. So to get into the actual review of the entire series, we're going to start it off with the Soul Society arc. So the Soul Society arc is considered by a lot of people that I've talked to, considered to be the strongest arc or the most liked arc. I don't care for it as much as other people do, but I do enjoy it nevertheless. You start off with the arc. Basically, I'm gonna skip past the beginning first couple chapters, just tells you about actually like the main characters and shows how he gets his powers and whatnot. But basically, how the Soul Society arc starts is Ichigo is just being a substitute Soul Reaper, just doing his daily, helping out killing Hollows, getting rid of them, and then he finds out that eventually what he's doing is apparently against Soul Society law. Like, it's against the law for him to be a human now with Shinigami powers. So they send in Byakuya and Renji to, first of all, dispose of Ichigo, and then to capture Rukia and take her back. So Ichigo loses and is on near death and basically loses his powers, but thanks to Urahara, which, might I add, is my favorite character in this series. He's just always very witty, and I love like the smart type. That's why Itachi was my favorite in Naruto, and he's very mysterious as well, just like Itachi was. But he goes to Urahara, and they're able to help get Ichigo's true Shinigami powers, because he turns out he actually had these powers on his own. He didn't know it, but he eventually finds out that he does. So he's able to get his actual powers, and they're able to go to the Soul Society. So the one cool thing I think people don't realize, because maybe if you don't play video games, or if you don't have a well-versed history of video games, is that Soul Society arc kind of plays out like a video game, kind of like an RPG, sort of, because it starts off with Ichigo basically running into like a boss level in-game, boss, that being Gin at the gate. And Gin basically clashes with them, sends him back, and he just realizes, he doesn't know it at the time because it wasn't that big of a clash, but he was just, overpowered and pushed back. That's like, one of the in-game characters. So, and for the rest of the arc, you have him basically go up progression levels, like going floor by floor. So he starts off and his first fight was with Ikaku, which is a third seat, and it was a very entertaining fight. And then next you have Renji, a lieutenant. But the thing about Renji is he's also very like self-inflicted about Rukia because that was his childlike friend and he really cares about her. But he also wants to do his duty, and he knows that she's made her choice, and it's also like intertwined into, their background where he basically feels like he was betrayed. But we won't get too deep into that. But eventually, Ichigo overcomes him, a lieutenant, and then the next challenge is obviously to go up even higher, and he gets Kenpachi. Now the Kenpachi fight is up for heavy debate in my opinion because obviously at the time we don't know it as to why Ichigo was able to defeat the captain Kenpachi, because when you see Kenpachi later on, I mean, you find out why, but it isn't until way into the war arc that you find out what Kenpachi is doing that causes Ichigo to win. But nevertheless, the inner monologue that Ichigo had with Zangetsu, at the time Zangetsu, spoilers, but he has the inner monologue, and I found that whenever he had those inner monologues early on, I really enjoyed it. That like I really enjoyed seeing that inner world and the talks, and it felt good. It felt like what other series that have inner like things like Naruto had, Kurama. I wish we would have got more of that with Kurama. But with Ichigo having the inner monologue, it really felt really good to see that, because you get to see like his actual like mental state of everything, and there actually being a pushing back factor into that. But he eventually overcomes him, and after that he tries to go, brazenly go in and try and save Rukia automatically, and eventually he's met with Byakuya, who basically is going to kill him. But Yoruichi saved him. Yoruichi is another one of my favorite characters because she's Yoruichi. So we get into the fact that Ichigo needs to learn Bankai. And obviously for normal Shinigami, that's pretty much like a tall task because not everybody has a Bankai at this point. It's kind of special still at this point, but it's still something very hard to do. And he needs to do it within 3 days because he needs to save her. So he eventually goes through the grueling training, and this ties back to the inner monologues with Zangetsu, which it wasn't really inner because thanks to the training he was actually able to come out. So that was really good seeing that, because it's always good to see, like I said, that inner strife. Especially being out where everybody can see it now. Now other people can see that he's fighting, himself and whatnot. So he eventually achieves Bankai. And then he gets over to Sogyo Hill. Now this is where I have a major issue with the starting portion of this stuff. Because Rukia is about to get executed by the Sogyoku, which is stated to have the offensive and defensive powers of over 1 million Zanpakuto. Equivalent to a million Zanpakuto. And it's kind of just like, just gone. It just, obviously Ichigo only blocked it once, right? And eventually they come in and they destroy it with other tools. I wish that was touched upon more as to like everything and how it was like taken down and how big of a deal that was, because after that we don't really hear much about it, because obviously it's gone. But I wanted to see exactly how strong 1 million Zanpakuto were, because I get it. It maybe didn't have the intent of force. So go through somebody that might be resisting. It thought it was just gonna just go through somebody that's just Rukia is just sitting there. She's just gonna take the hit and die. Whereas Ichigo like gave pushback. So maybe it was just one of those things, because it did kind of back up and prepare to go forward again. But nevertheless, I had a big issue with that, because I just thought it just should have been more of a stress point, especially afterwards. But getting into that, we have the Bianca fight, which everybody loves the fight. You know, I was seeing all the clips of it. You know, first time seeing Ichigo with Bankai, it was a very amazing scene. But the highlight of the fight has got to be Ichigo's first like holization with White. You know, you don't get to see White necessarily, but you get to see the hollow mask take over and see Ichigo go crazy. At the time when I was seeing this, I was like, dang, what is this? I'm just YouTubing, you know, seeing clips of it and stuff like this back when it was like, it's still pretty hard to get clips of things and see exactly what's going on. So that was just really a really great turn of events. But the biggest plot twist to this day for the series, maybe second, I'd say second biggest, is the Aizen faking his death and ends up being the main villain of the series for the most part and having just, you know, this grandmaster plan. All in all, the arc is a great arc. I just don't hold it this heavily. When people talk about Bleach, the first arc they usually bring up is either Soul Society or the Fate Katakura. I'm just like kind of on the fence with which one I want to choose. But I want to lean towards Soul Society. So, with that being said, we're gonna shift gears over to the Hollow arc, which is Waco Mundo arc, however you want to put it. So I like this that Ichigo starts off very confident at the beginning of the arc. You know, when Yami and Ukiura show up, but it isn't soon after that he started to have serious internal conflict with the hollow that's inside of him that's starting to come out during the fight, causing Ichigo to eventually lose the fight, and Urahara has to step in to save him. And then you just see like the mental state of Ichigo. And that's one thing about Bleach is just like, it's always this focus on Ichigo's mental state from start of the series to the end of the series. It's always something going on with his mental state. It is until the very end of the series where he's like truly content with where his mental is. And I just love that because it's just always, it's kind of like, it's like every day, it's normal, you know, normal me and you behavior. Like we go throughout the day and we're like trying to figure out what's going on. Ichigo's the same way. They have inner, you know, conflicts with themselves, just like we have inner conflicts with ourselves. So, but then we get introduced to the Vizards. Now the Vizards, oh man, I was thoroughly disappointed in the Vizards overall. The introduction was great. Introduction was very strong. I really love the mysteriousness of that at the beginning, you know, because you only thought Ichigo was the only one with a hollow mask, but it turns out there's somebody else with a hollow mask. But it was implemented very poorly later on down the line, but we'll get into that later. So to start, the training and, you know, trying to pull out Ichigo's inner hollow and get control of it, that was great. I loved it because one thing we got to see all the Vizards like take a crack at, you know, trying to keep Ichigo in place. So you kind of saw fighting, but it was kind of off screen as well. So you can see everything, but you still got a good introduction to the characters, at least bare bones. And it was just really cool because you saw different types. You had a brawler type, you had weapons, you had Kido. So it was just different things. But after that, we're going to go ahead and go over to the Waco Mundo arc. So the Waco Mundo arc, I really hated the environment. Sand. And I get it. There's no point for it to be really like complicated and, you know, just extra, because I mean they are just hollows just in a ravageous land. And like when you see Grimjow's backstory, you know, you see that he's just like traveling around just, you know, killing things, eating, trying to survive. So it's a dog eat dog world out there. So just the wasteland makes sense. But for the aesthetics of looking at it, I'm just like, damn, this is just sand. Like, it's nothing really good to look at in the background. Like, when you would see like small shots of like the castle and stuff behind, that was cool. It gave you something to look at. Like, it just didn't do it too much. But I mean, that's kind of me being picky, I'd say. There's not really too much he could really. Kubo could have really did with the actual background that would have probably maybe improved it without overhauling the entire environment. But needless to say, one of the best things to come out of this arc is Grimmjow. So we meet Grimmjow earlier on because he comes to, the real world, the human world, but just his character overall, just like the cockiness and the bravado that he boasts all the time, is very entertaining because whenever he's on screen, he's on screen, and you're just so interested in like what the heck he's about to say, what he's gonna do next. And it was cool seeing, the subtle scenes with him and Orihime. And Orihime had that effect pretty much with everybody she came encounter with, except the two chicks that just basically were on Aizen's dick and just wanted, to, attack her and make fun of her and stuff like that. But Grimmjow was definitely a highlight of this arc. And seeing his battle with Ichigo was very poetic, because both of them don't want to lose just by nature. And then you see that Ichigo gets that resolve boost with Orihime saying, "Hey, don't get hurt anymore." And then you think it's over, and then you get a further backstory of Grimmjow, seeing what he's gone through and how he's made it, and he just doesn't want to lose just because that's just who he is. And sometimes characters don't need to have some like soft-spoken or like some big impactful backstory to be strong. Like, I feel like a lot of times some series, they try and go above and beyond for their villains to make you care for them and like see why they're fighting so hard that they are. But sometimes it's just like these guys that's just their nature. They just got to do what they got to do. So it was good to see that. And the biggest issue of the arc that makes sense, but also the biggest issue of the arc, is Orihime basically taking the place of Rukia from the Soul Society arc, of being the damsel in distress, the Princess Peach in the castle. So literally, she was in a castle, just like Rukia was at the top of the prison. But it really was kind of weak. But something that people don't notice is that each of the arcs are kind of tailored to Ichigo's main friends, that being Rukia, Orihime, Chad, and Uryu. So, and I'll make another video touching on that specifically, but if you can pick up on that if you actually think about it. I'm not gonna go too deep into it, but it makes sense as to why she was the focal point of that arc. Next, then, but the other big point of the arc, which is probably the biggest point of this arc, is Ukiura versus Ichigo, and eventually full hollow Ichigo. Obviously, like, you can take this many different ways. You can be like, oh man, this is like major plot armor, Ichigo died and he was able to come back and blah, blah, blah. And plot armor is it's just an age-old debate for anime people. They're gonna complain about this, they're gonna defend this, they're gonna blah, blah, blah. I don't want to get too much into it. It made sense why it happened, and I'll make another video as to why that scenario happened in the way it was supposed to happen. But it was still a very good positive sequence of events that I really wish Ukiura could have stayed around longer, but I feel like it was necessary for him to go. He completed his full character development. He came full circle and he completed everything that he needed to complete. If he stayed around any longer, it could have risked ruining the character development that he had already gotten. So that was the end of the Hollow arc, or Wakamundo arc, and then you would fast forward over to the Fate Katakura town. So there were good fights. So the Fate Katakura town is mainly just fights, really, outside of the dialogue and history lesson you get with Ichigo and from his dad and whatnot, and Aizen. But the backstories that you got for the Top Espada were sufficient enough for me. But the only thing that I didn't like, which makes sense when you see later on in the war arc, is that the head captain was kind of like lackluster. He had his moments though, he torched the three ladies and their giant, the big guy's name escapes me. I'm horrible with names. I'm sorry about that. I'm horrible with names. And then he went toe to toe with the thing that Aizen created to seal his Zanpakuto, and he still destroyed it with his hands. But I still feel like it should have had more of an Aizen versus the head captain feel, just to gauge it. Because for people like, I'm not big into power scaling, but I pay attention to it. For something like, for people, that community, it's like, damn, how can we gauge it? Because we want to find out, like, obviously Aizen knows that Yamamoto is a threat, but we don't know how big of a threat. Like, is it a threat like he can't even defeat Yamamoto, or is it a threat like, oh, it'd be a high diff fight, type shit like that. But regardless, I feel like that was kind of lackluster and kind of like a cock tease, like, damn, bro, like, we can't even get to see the fight. But probably the most touching part of this review, or this arc, is Gen's reveal. Seeing that Gen literally was doing everything he was doing literally just to protect Rangiku. It felt very good when you seen it, but it also made you think like, damn, didn't see that coming. And it's kind of, it didn't, well, I wouldn't say it was forced, but it's like, you did a lot of bad things, and I don't know, it just didn't seem like he would be the type that he's doing all this for the greater good of Rangiku, which he doesn't play the role of like Itachi, how like Itachi does, like for the entire village or the world, blah, blah, blah. It's literally just doing it for one person. So, which is kind of just like, I didn't really care to, I didn't feel it, I didn't believe it that much, but it still felt good watching. You still, and reading. And next we have the whole Ichigo going to the Dangai and having this Dangai form and just finding out, like I said, this brings up the internal strife, and you see the emotion that his inner self, which is this hollow and the Zanpakuto, when they're fused, and they're just like, he doesn't know what they're really doing. They really don't want to, like, they're really trying to protect him from losing them. They don't want to lose him, just like he doesn't want to lose them. But he makes the decision to go ahead and make the decision to go find on Getsuga, and eventually he loses his powers. Now Aizen's defeat, it was handled smartly, I should say, because it wasn't like just an outright defeat. It had to throw in the Uehara sealed him, which I felt was a very good touch on things, because it's like, okay, so we didn't have just like the bad guy just overpowered and he was just beat. It was, no, we're gonna have to seal this guy with the guy that literally helped Aizen get to where he was, and that's Uehara. Because if Uehara hadn't been the genius that he is and hadn't made his Hogyoku, then Aizen wouldn't have been able to steal that Hogyoku and make his Hogyoku perfect like he did. But everything had consequences, and Ichigo lost his powers. Aizen wanted more than he could grasp, and he ended up being sealed away. So, in the Fullbring arc is widely hated on. And I can understand why. If you are just like a pure like battle shonen, you just want to see battles, you just want to see fights, you don't really care for like the characters' like internal, thoughts and feelings, I can understand that. But the Ichigo mental state, like I said, it's always a recurring thing with Ichigo with his mental state. Seeing him go from, having a place in the world, being a soul reaper, to now he's just a regular, teenager in school. They're asking him, hey, Ichigo, what are you going to do now? What are you going to do when you get done with school? And he's just like, he doesn't know, because he's just like, but he didn't think he would be like saving the world for the rest of his life, or some type of superhero or something like that. And he didn't care for that stuff. He just wanted to be able to protect the people that he cares about or anybody that needs help. That's all he cared about. But now that he's unable to do that, he feels lost in this world. And I feel like that's really missed upon. It's like this whole arc is really just about showing the Ichigo as a character, and then you get to see like just the series of events that he has to go to mentally, because they basically break him. Like, he's in a vulnerable state at the beginning of the arc, and like for the entirety of the arc, his mental state is getting deteriorated by losing his friends one by one. They're turning on him one by one, thanks to Tsukiyomi, the book's powers. He's able to sit there and rewrite their memories, and he's just becoming the bad guy. And it's just like at the end, you see him literally almost broken. And then, but it's his other friends from the Salt Reapers that literally end up being the ones that save him. Which I think that's a nice, like, poetic parallel, that the people that he was at war with at the beginning of the series are the ones that towards the end are the ones that save him. So I don't have too much to say about the Fullbring arc. I did enjoy the new design, kinda, because it was something different, like with the whole black lines through it. But it was a very good, like, for the character. I don't consider it an L by any shape or form, that like some people might consider it being the worst arc. I don't. So I can't tell you where it's at, but it's not the worst. So, and last, we're getting to the war arc. I don't want to go too deep into the war arc because obviously I want to try and be as much spoiler free as possible. There's still gonna be spoilers in here, but I still don't want to get too deep into it in case people that anime only are watching and they maybe just are just supporting the video or just watching and don't want to get ruined by everything. But so for the war arc, amazing fights, right? That's the first thing I can say about this, is there is amazing fights and very, very entertaining fights. That's just the first thing I can say. Like, I feel like this war arc, fight-wise, was handled a lot better than Naruto's war arc, fight-wise, because I felt like a lot of Naruto's like important, like cool fights got off-screen, whereas this one didn't really. So, and then the history reveals, seeing Yamamoto, talk about 1,000 years ago, you watch talking about, back in the day and how things have changed, and you get to learn about the 900 years, 90 years, 9 days, stuff like that. And then obviously everybody loves the head captain Yamamoto, his fight, getting to see his Bankai. The one issue I had is it was just overkill. You could tell because I was reading it weekly when it was coming out, you could tell that he was gonna die. It didn't make sense for him to go all out like this, because like he could have just killed him with the first version of his Bankai and it would have been done. But he made it a point to show off everything. It's kind of like how, like a character that's gonna lose a fight, they just constantly brag about their abilities at the beginning, and they look like they should win, but then later on they lose because they just kept bragging about their abilities. It's kind of the same way I felt about Yamamoto. I don't like that, because I felt like somebody that was well seasoned and is a veteran like he shouldn't have been like that, I don't know, boastful about his abilities. So I felt like it was out of character for him, for somebody that's supposed to be that smart of a fighter. He shouldn't have lost the way he did, but he did. The other cool thing about this was the whole Quincy's scribe system. Seeing all the scribes from A to Z. It was just very cool seeing the different abilities, like A for Almighty, B for the balance, stuff like that. And it was A for antithesis, M for miracle, stuff like that. And it was very cool seeing that, because it was just new, and it was very creative to sit there and use the entire alphabet to cover powers, and to see the fights come from those characters that have those powers was another thing. Like Grimmy and Kenpachi's fight was just insane. You have getting a black hole, cutting a meteor on top of the Soul Society. It it was very, intriguing to watch. The biggest thing that I like, the best thing I liked about the series was the connection that your watch had to Ichigo at the very end. Is when it finally wrapped up. Like, hey, Yuha literally looks like old man Zangetsu, and then you find out Ichigo has Quincy blood, and now it's like, dang, that wasn't my Zangetsu. That was my Quincy powers, and that's why it made sense why he was subjugating White, and White ended up being part of his actual Zangetsu. That's why he never lied. White never lied to him. When Ichigo was constantly asking him, like, who are you? And he's like, I told you I'm Zangetsu. But Ichigo doesn't realize that he's actually telling the truth. White never lied to him. He was Zangetsu. So, and that's why Ichigo could never really hear what old man Zangetsu was saying, because it was always he just never knew what he was actually saying, because he just thought that was his actual Zangetsu when it wasn't. But I felt like that was such a very great poetic way to like wrap up things and be like, hey, this tied back from the beginning, and now it's here. So now you know what it actually is. But I really enjoyed that. And obviously we got to touch on the rushed ending. The rushed ending it sucked. It sucked very, very hard. Hopefully the anime, adds a little more fluff to it, so it feels a little bit better. But I don't knock it too much, because obviously I've heard that Kubo was sick and that they were trying to rush him, and it just wasn't a good thing. Which it always sucks when things like animes are rushed at the end. But it really sucks. It really sucks that it had to be the way it was. But overall, the series, I really love Bleach. I really do. It's not the most complicated anime. It's not the best story out there. But I feel like the story itself is compartmentalized, and it's actually each arc. Arcs are tied together, but they're not like some grand adventure. Like One Piece is a grand adventure. They're all intertwined to make things happen at the end. Naruto was kind of like the same thing. And even though Naruto has this basis where it's not all tied together as well. But Bleach is just like its own thing. And I enjoy that. You don't have to think too hard about everything to connect the dots. And I feel like it's still a battle shonen. So it doesn't have to go too in depth. But overall, I'll give the rating an 8 out of 10. Which I know if people that watch my Naruto, I gave Naruto a 7 out of 10. But I just personally felt more enjoyment viewing Bleach and reading it than I did Naruto. So, but these ratings are always, subjective, and they could change over time. Back in the day, I would have gave Naruto a higher rating than Bleach. So, and today I give Bleach a higher rating than Naruto. But regardless, I appreciate you guys for watching this video. If you stuck around this long, like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what else you might want me to cover. If you like these longer videos, let me know. If you want these shorter videos, I can try and do that too as well. I just want to, get my thoughts out there. They might become a little complicated, but they're just me trying to get the best thing I can out there. So, all right, y'all.